viewers, welcome to this lecture entitled History of Environment in India, the Medieval Period. Medieval India refers to a long period of post-classical history of the Indian subcontinent between the ancient period and the modern period. It is usually regarded as running approximately from the break of the Gupta Empire, which started in the 6th century CE, to the beginning of the early modern period in the year 1526, with the start of the Mughal Empire. Although some historians regard it as both starting and finishing it at later than the points that are mentioned above. The medieval period itself is basically divided into the early medieval and the later medieval period. The United Nations Conference on Human Environment, held in Stockholm in the year 1992, was for the first time that the conceptualization of environment was elucidated at the international level. Recognition was given not only to the importance of environment, but also to other deteriorating factors which required protection, such as poverty, deforestation, increase in population, and not just limiting of environment to the available resources of air, water, soil, wildlife, etc. In India, the traces of environmental protection, that is the sustainability, it can be identified through various sources of ancient literature where different themes such as preservation, safeguarding and management of the environment can be detected. Most of the elements of nature were considered to be holy within the Hindu theology, which is practiced even in the present times. Significant care was actually taken during the previous times also, where the conservation of natural resources was actually a priority. And also the sacred book such as the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Purans, they give a clear view regarding the relationships that exist between nature and man, along with the liability of mankind towards nature. Also, various verses in the Vedic literature basically state the importance of safeguarding the environment and prevention of pollution. Now, coming to the medieval period, as we would see that there has been a constant decline towards the importance of the protection of environment. And basically, the people now, they do not consider the medieval period to be an era if there is some concern related to environmental protection. This period was basically dominated by the Mughals and the Muslim rulers, who considered the forests no more than the grasslands where they could hunt. The rulers as well as the masses were more intrigued in war and tended to serve people than to serve Mother Earth. No worthy jurisprudence of environmental protection has been testified in this period except for the rule of Emperor Akbar. Also, the account of Babur, that is Baburnama, gives a detailed description of the flora and the fauna which existed in a very, very systematic manner. And there's a mention also of different types of exotic and endangered animals, birds, trees, which enabled us to label him as a keen researcher and a very fine observer. The renowned Emperor Jahangir patronized a large number of artists to whom he ordered to portray the animals and birds. Foremost amongst these artists was Mansoor, who painted the flora of Kashmir in great detail. Jahangir is also responsible for the construction of some of the finest gardens in Mughal India, but this shouldn't let us to believe that the concern for the protection of environment was just a matter of leisure and a mere curiosity about nature within them. And barring the royal trees which enjoyed patronage from being cut by imposing a fine, there was no other restrictions on cutting down of trees. And also, the right to hunting of animals such as tigers, lions, etc., was only restricted to the members of royal families, and this in turn had caused huge amounts of problems within also and between the societies as well. Therefore, it is comprehensive enough for us to believe that during this period, the forests and the wildlife shrank steadily in size as there was no definite policies for their protection. During this period, environmentalism and imperialism, they have a shared past, and the newly protected forests marked a symbiotic alliance of environmental concern with the expansion of state power in India. Although there were not many laws and policies which featured during the medieval period, which clearly gave us the view that during that era in India specifically, the concern of environmental protection was not in their checklists. And whatever gardens or the trees that were there was absolutely made out of the curiosity of nature and not for the well-being of nature. Now, from this particular lecture, hence said, one of the MCQs are, when did the medieval period begin in India? The options are 7th century, 4th century, 5th century, and the 6th century. Yes, you're right. The answer to this particular question is 6th century. Now, coming to the elucidation of environmental history of medieval era in India, it has been seen that the medieval era, though did not play a very constricted and a scientific role in environmental protection, but it needs a major highlight because from the medieval era and beyond, these were some of the few stepping stones where the environmental protection was something that people started believing indeed. But before the medieval era, there were certain evidences which proved that people were also very much concerned about the environment. There is evidence from the archaeological setups which have been gathered from Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, which were the prominent cities of the civilization. Their awareness about hygiene and sanitation as evident from the construction of the ventilated houses, orderly streets, numerous wells, bathrooms, public baths, and covered underground drains. Protection and cleaning of the environment was the essence of the Vedic culture. Charak Samhita has given many instructions for the use of water and also for maintaining its purity. Under Arthashastra, various punishments were prescribed for cutting trees, damaging forests, and for killing animals, and the environmental ethics of nature conservation were not only applicable to the human man, but also the rulers and the kings were also bound by them. The policies and laws of medieval India were meant mostly or were created mostly by the Mughal rulers, whereby the forests actually meant that they were no more than that of the woodlands or the grasslands which could be used as a hunting ground by the Mughal emperors. And here it was been found that the constructions that were being made were also not kept while the constructions were being made, it was not kept in mind about the environment. No considerations were being given regarding the protection of environment. And as per the setups which were being found and as per the history and the literature that has been reviewed, all the settings were done keeping in mind just about the curiosity of nature and the mere interests of the rulers in hunting and also in decorations of their areas. Now, in case of during the medieval era, there were certain taxes being levied, whereby the taxes were of importance to that of the environmental protection. So, Kharaj was a tax on agricultural land under the Delhi Sultanate, and its range was one third to the half of its produce. Kharaj is mainly imposed on the non-Muslims, and they convert them to Islam in recently conquered territories of Islam. Under the law of Islam, only native Muslims or those who converted to Islam were allowed to own land. Thus, the non-Muslim cultivators were basically encouraged to adopt Islam so that they could sustain their agricultural holdings. And apart from Kharaj, there were several other taxes also which were being levied, which include Zakat was a tax on the property realized by the Muslims. Kham was one of the was on the taxes which were being basically levied upon the treasures, and Jizya was also levied on the non-Muslim subjects, particularly the Hindus. Women and children were, however, exempted from the taxes. And also for the fact that apart from the environmental protection, which was one of the least concern in the medieval era in India, a lot of importance was given to the agricultural lands. Since the population was also increasing, huge areas, huge forests were being cut down and transferred to agricultural fields. And as I just mentioned earlier, that the taxes like that of the Kharaj taxes was one of the major taxes which was being levied upon the people during the Delhi Sultanate times. Now, from the lecture that has been done so far, another quiz to this particular information is: which of the following taxes were collected during the Delhi Sultanate? The options are Ryotwari tax, income tax, Mahalwari tax, Kharaj tax. Yes, you're right. The answer to this particular question is Kharaj tax. Now, in the medieval era, the territory was flanked by the two warring states of Mewar and Marwar, which were defined just as to the farming of very, very specific trees. The Avla plantation was seen as demarcating the Mewar region, whereas Marwar was actually recognized with the Babool tree, suggesting a broad division of the territory in conditions of the semi-arid and the wet regions. Landscape was visualized not only in conditions of the type of agriculture it could sustain, but also in the conditions of the animals that could specifically harbor in that region. In the medieval era, it was being found that there was a common dearth of scholars focusing on environment and the man-environment interaction. A serious power on the man-environment studies in the medieval India has been that of the annals. Power of the environment on the social formations has been a major exploration of the annals. Harbans Mukhia is credited with the creation of this popular concept in India by translating the writings of the French historians, besides with Maurice Amiret. The power of annals custom is visible in significant contribution made through Chetan Singh. He had explored the connection flanked by environment and civilization in Western Himalayas. Likewise, Mayank Kumar has also attempted to look at the interaction flanked by the environment and civilization in medieval Rajasthan. He has questioned the notion that the traditional civilizations always practiced the methods aimed at the prudent use of natural possessions, and has also cited many of the examples or cases whereby the use of nature is been or has been of the most prominence in the traditional civilizations of Rajasthan. He also cautions that the magnitude of the use of natural possessions did multiply manifold under the impact of industrial revolution. In an effort to track the interaction flanked by the humans and environment, one should be very careful to avoid the notions of geographical determinism. It is a major cause of concern for the historians dealing with Middle Ages. Therefore, Faber suggested that there were no necessities but only possibilities. A river might be treated as one civilization as a barrier, yet as a route through another. Ramachandra Guha and David Arnold had suggested that moving more firmly within the parameters of environmental history per se, there is the study of human engagement in excess of time with the physical environment, of the environment as a context, agent, and power in human history. Here, nature figures unabashedly as human habitat, but as in a dual stability. On one hand, they are ranged as those elements of nature climate, topography, animal and insect life, vegetation and soils which directly or indirectly form human action and productivity. In affecting the land use and survival, they help to promote or prohibit specific shapes of social structure, economic organization, and belief system. They also basically extend towards the margins of the historical analysis and bring center stage a cast of non-human characters normally ignored, at least until recently. But the connection is a reciprocal one. For man, more than any other or any other livelihood organism, also alters the landscape, fells trees, erodes soils, kills off the unwelcome plants and predatory animals, installing favored species in their areas. Such works have to delve into a wider set of sources, folk songs and legends, and also hereby the civilizations and nature, howsoever not very well defined, but actually questions the attributes which people have made. Agrarian expansion and reclamation pattern mainly depend upon the nature of the land endowments in early medieval era. The traditional wisdom of the Brahmanas concerning rainy season, sowing season, etc., and the knowledge of the recognized practices of agriculture were diffused in dissimilar regions. The preservation of cattle wealth espoused through Brahmanic ideals helped agrarian economy. Many texts dealing with agricultural knowledge began to be translated in vernaculars, and significant instance of the diffusion can be seen basically in the 9th century inscription from the Ajmer region. The term Brihaddala mentioned in the inscriptions means big plough, which could have helped in breaking hard soil and making it pliable. Pounders were used in Bengal under the Palas. As these growths indicate sub-regional agrarian bases urbanized in the post-Gupta era. The procedure of agrarian expansion sustained unabated, and the 6th to 9th centuries AD marked through emergence of agricultural regions. Bengal under the Palas and Senas, Orissas under the Somamvasis, and later Ganges are cases on point. Through the early medieval era, dissimilar manners of water supply came to be associated with dissimilar regions. Western India was characterized through the construction of wells in Rajasthan and Gujarat, also known as the Vapis. The use of Arahatta became popular in the 6th to 9th century Rajasthan. Harshcharita refers to the Udghati and Ghatyantras, which were in vogue in western UP ponds came to be associated with rural Bengal. The access to and utilization of these water bodies necessitated the organization of a supra-village organization, and in course of time could make nodal points in the rural areas. Though not all regions witnessed uniform patterns of reclamation, in Bengal the deltaic regions were also colonized. In regions like Rajasthan, Gujarat and Maharashtra, land endowments were made in the waste regions. The transfer of privileges and sheer rights to the beneficiaries of these endowments posited them in an advantageous location vis-a-vis the ranks of peasantry. Though in the Brahmaputra valley, the land endowments were situated in already reclaimed regions, in information, core of the valley was reclaimed before the onset of the early medieval era. Limited practice of wet rice farming through the people is apparent from the epigraphic conditions and the ethnographic literature on pre-contemporary irrigation of the valley. Reclamation in the hilly regions of the valley sustained till the 19th century AD. Situation in the medieval era, extension of farming sustained in the medieval era as well. Sultanate rulers are basically credited with the extension of farming, reclamation and construction of canals. The trend sustained under the Mughals as well. Integration of some of the regions in Assam started only in the medieval era and sustained even in the colonial era till 19th century AD. Crop patterns, stability and charge in the medieval era. The Sultanate rulers may not have directly promoted agrarian expansion until or like the early India. Though their interest in the land revenue organization is undeniable, and it had an indirect bearing upon the agricultural manufacture. The imperial dominion consisted of big regions of alluvium soil. Though they were not sure about the exceptions like the Shivalik hills, due northwards or the broken Aravalli range in the southwest of Delhi, as demonstrated also in the Baburnama, the arid stretch of the Agra-Gwalior region necessitated the creation of artificial water storage facilities. While also during this time there were mainly the practice of two kinds of crops, the Kharif, which is the monsoon, and Rabi, which is the winter crop. There was a possibility of the third Zayad or additional crop of short duration in Doab. As distant as crop patterns are concerned, the situation in the medieval era sustained to be similar from the preceding times except for a few changes. Rice and sugarcane were produced in the east and wheat, oil, seeds, etc. were produced in the north. Sugarcane was also certainly introduced in the 17th century AD. Cotton was extensively cultivated along in those areas, and also certain crops like maize began to be cultivated in Maharashtra and Rajasthan only in the second half of the 17th century AD. Now coming to certain rulers, basically like Muhammad Tughlaq and Firoz Tughlaq, they are credited for developing a big number of gardens in and around the regions of Delhi and Chittor. Grapes received special attention in these gardens. These orchards, though produced mainly for the cities and their elites, Portuguese are basically credited with introducing tobacco and certain fruits in India. These contained papaya, cashew nuts, and pineapple. Coffee was also introduced in this era. State intervention and regional variations also come under this particular time, whereby the region under farming considerably increased under the Sultanate and the Mughal era. Firoz Tughlaq contributed considerably to the construction of an extensive organization of canals. The canals from Yamuna, Satluj, and Ghaggar watered the regions of Hisar in Haryana. In Sindh and Punjab, the canals were relatively smaller but contributed to the growth of agriculture. Just as to the estimates worked out through historians, extension of farming approximately doubled from 16th century to the beginning of 20th century AD. The clearance of forests and the agrarian expansion sustained in Bihar, Bengal, and Awadh regions. The practice of constructing the canals sustained under Mughals also, but it is suggested that owing to their low stage of flowing, their potential of irrigation remained limited. The agriculture situation in the medieval northeast began to change from 13th century AD onwards. Now, in the place of the early medieval agrarian growths, the agrarian growths can also be seen in the Deccan Plateau, the Andhra Plains, the Tamil Nadu regions, and the coastal strips from Maharashtra down towards Kerala. The peasant economy, which was confined in the early peninsula only to Marutam, did spread to other ecozones as well. It has been suggested that the peasant civilization was getting organized. Brahmadeyas and the temples appeared as instruments of agrarian expansion. Therefore, from this particular lecture, it can be concluded that although during the rule of the Mughals and the earlier kings during the medieval era, there was not much focus upon the kind of environment that was building up, because they were more engrossed in wars, in making more lands for themselves. But what could be focused was that there was a huge agrarian expansion which was happening parallelly during that time. And it was during this period that India was actually seeing a revolution in terms of agriculture. There was huge land at stake, huge agricultural lands or farming lands which were being made just to ensure that there was enough crops for the growing population in India. Thank you.